back here in the tackle room, and today we're talking about one of my all-time favorite presentations, the Texas rig, and why it can be so effective in the pre-spawn. I'm going to be giving up some of my favorite cheats and tricks. Stick around, you don't want to miss this one.
Oh, that was gone. No, that's a fish. I got him. Ooh, I got him. Oh, yeah. Come on, buddy. That's a good fish, too.
And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing, and in South Mississippi, we've moved from the pre-spawn into the spawn. And for the rest of the country, well, you're just now getting into the first parts of the pre-spawn. But these tips are going to cover a wide range of areas for your early spring fishing. You know, we've got lipless cranks, we've got square bills, we've got jerk baits, and a lot of that is getting most of the focus right now during the pre-spawn. And with good reason. Those are great presentations. They're effective and they catch fish. However, I often feel like the good old Texas rig gets left on the back burner. It often gets overlooked. And whenever it comes to fishing, even during the pre-spawn, it's always a good idea to have as much variety in your arsenal in order to show those fish something different. Now today, we're going to be covering different ways of rigging a Texas rig. Yes, there are more than one. Different ways of fishing a Texas rig, and some of the things that I like to do in certain situations. It can be a great way to elicit big strikes during the pre-spawn. Now, first up, well, we're going to be talking about, I guess, your normal average type of Texas rig, what everybody pretty much thinks of whenever you're thinking about fishing a Texas rig worm. And that is this guy right here. I've got a 5-inch stick bait with a 1/4 ounce bullet weight, and I've got it unpegged. And there's a reason that I have it unpegged. A lot of times you'll see that I'll have them pegged, but sometimes I want it to be unpegged, and it depends on where and how I'm fishing it. Now I've got this on braid. This is 30-pound braid, and I've got this to a 17-pound fluorocarbon leader. And this is just a regular old bait cast. It's nothing fancy, 7.1 to 1 gear ratio on a 7-foot medium heavy rod with a fast action tip. And this medium heavy with the fast action, this is going to be more the type of rod that I like to use whenever it comes to fishing something like a Texas rig. And the more sensitive you can get the rod, the better off that you'll be. Now I'm going to be fishing this in places that have a lot of thick cover, a lot of vegetation, which is why I have that worm unpegged, why I have that weight unpegged. Because if I have it pegged, it will want to dig more into that vegetation regardless of how I'm retrieving it. And that's not necessarily what I want. Now, there's a couple of different types of presentations that I like to do with this particular setup. And we're going to go ahead and go out on the water, and I'm going to show you some basic retrieves that you can do with a Texas rig that, well, they're simple to do, they're easy to do, and if you're having trouble fishing a Texas rig, I'm sure these are going to help you out.
All right. We've kind of arrived at destination number 1 here. And over there, right there, we've got a main lake point that comes out, and it's got a little bit deep of a drop off there, and we've got the old Berkley Pit Boss tied on. You know, not everything has to be a worm. Worms are great. Worms are amazing. Worms do the job and work well. But a lot of times, you can use something completely different. And I kind of want to I'm going to work that bottom today. Let me get I kind of want to work the bottom. We're dragging it along. This is what we're doing. This is our retrieve. And I'm just kind of doing it to the side like you would, you know, Just sweeping it to the side like you would a jig. That's what we're looking for. Just sweep it to the side and then reel in that slack, and then sweep it to the side, which is something we've talked about before. It's a very simple basic retrieve. Cast it out there, bomb it out there as far as you can. Make sure you've got slack when it's sitting on that ground, on that bottom. Give it time to go down to the bottom, and then just sweep it. Sweep it to the side, reel in the slack. Sweep it to the side, and reel in the slack. That's all there is to it. That is the most basic Texas rig retrieve, very much like a jig retrieve. You know, it's a simple and it's effective way of presenting that bait and keeping that bottom contact. If you want, you know, you can kind of point your tip of your rod down and make sure that you're, you know, staying low to that water. And when it comes to hook sets on these, you will feel bites. You will feel the bites on those. So you reel down and you set that hook with some gusto. You put some snatch onto it. You know, like I say, like you're trying to pull the dentures out of the fish's mouth. That's what my dad used to tell me. He used to tell me that I looked like I was trying to snatch the dentures right out of the fish's mouth. And I was like, you know what? That's probably pretty accurate. I want to make sure that that hook point is driven home. Now that we're kind of in a thicker hydrilla field here, as we drift north, the hydrilla is going to get thicker and thicker. I'm going to the overhand retrieve like this, and that's going to pull me up and over those plants a lot more. If I was doing the sweep to the side like that, you can see that I'm snagging plants. Now I'm coming through, but I kind of want to just glide up and over. And this is a spot right here where I'm going to pull my bobber stop up, and I'm going to let that weight kind of do its thing like that. Let that weight separate a little bit, and if that weight falls down into the hydrilla, you know, the bait will stay up on top, a little bit more exposed. That's one of the times whenever you're looking to go, you know, pegged or not pegged, right? It's okay to have a bobber stop on there. You can just slide it up some, but you need to be mindful that you've got it in there, because if you know, wind your line in too much, you'll get that bobber stop in that top line guide, and that can be a pain in the butt, especially if you don't notice it and you go to cast and you get yourself a big old bird's nest. You know, not that I would know anything about that at all, you know, not that I've ever done that.
So, the good old standard straight Texas rig. Whenever I'm fishing heavy vegetation, obviously I want that weight to be able to fall away so the worm can rest on top of that vegetation. It allows me the ability to bring it up and over with an overhand retrieve, or if I want to drag it to the side, I can stay around the bottom. I can keep that bottom contact. It all depends where those bass are in the water column and how they're doing that day. If I've got a lot of hydrilla, you know, and I see that the bass might be a little bit more active, obviously I'm going to be coming up and over. I'm going to be doing the upwards retrieve. And if I see where those bass, well, they're maybe a little bit closer to the bottom, or the vegetation may be sparse, it may be clumpy, and I want to slide in between that hydrilla, that milfoil, that grass, or whatever, then I'm going to be doing that side sweep presentation. But, you know, we've just got your regular 3/0 hook, and I like to use a 3/0 EWG worm hook. If you're using a regular worm hook, if you're using, you know, something like a flipping or pitching hook, I suggest a 3/0. That way, a lot of that tail can stay free, and it gives you maximum amount of movement and action whenever you're working that bait. It's just something that I like to do. Now, moving on to a little bit different setup. This is something I'm going to be using for, maybe a little bit cleaner bottom, maybe a little bit deeper water, but it's no less effective. Now for something, and this is really good, especially in the late pre-spawn and into the spawn, well, I've got a lizard tied on. And if you fish in South Mississippi or anywhere in the deep South, you know that a lizard is going to get bites when it comes to fishing the spawn. Bass attack these because, well, they see it as a predator that's going to invade their bed, anything like a bluegill or a craw, but especially a lizard. I love fishing a lizard this time of year. And I've got it rigged pretty much the same way. I've got it on a 3/0 hook, but I've got a 1/8 ounce bullet weight that I have pegged. This, I've got the peg all the way down. And the reason why I have it that way is because I don't want that weight to go anywhere. I want that weight to stay right where it's at, because this, I'm going to be fishing closer to the bottom. And as I said, I might be fishing a little bit deeper water. I might be fishing a little bit more hard bottom. So I don't need that weight to separate so much. I need to stay closer to the bottom. And in the pre-spawn, especially in the late pre-spawn, as we move into the spawn in general, a good old lizard, and this is just a regular Zoom lizard, but the brand doesn't matter. You can use your favorite type of lizard. A brush hog, a creature bait is a great option. It doesn't always have to be a worm. It doesn't always have to be a Senko or a ribbon tail. Mix it up, right? You can do so many different types of soft plastics on a Texas rig. I suggest trying out a whole bunch of different variety, even something like a Fat Albert, right? A grub. Or if you're feeling really adventurous, maybe something like a tube. Don't shy away from experimentation. And again, this I've got on a little bit lighter setup because I'm not going to be fishing as much vegetation. 12-pound fluorocarbon, again, 7.1 to 1 reel, and I've got this on a really sensitive, this is more of a high dollar rod, right? If you're going to be Texas rig fishing, well, spare the money on the reel, spend the money on the rod, because that's where you're going to get most of your sensation, most of your feeling. This is actually one of my more expensive rods. This is a Duckett, and this is an extremely sensitive rod. So if I'm crankbait fishing, I don't worry about it so much. But with this, I want to feel every single little bite. So I'm going to spend a little bit more money on the rod if I'm able to, for a open water, less vegetation, more hard bottom. If I'm fishing a Texas rig in that area, this is going to be the type of rod that I'm working. Now, lastly, we've got something that might just be a little bit of an oddball, and that's a finesse Texas rig setup. I've got a 1/0 worm hook here, just a little bitty worm hook with a 1/16 ounce bullet weight. And I've got just a little bitty, this is the small Googan Kraken crawl. But, again, you can use a Ned rig bait, you can use a grub, you can use whatever, but something smaller. And this, I'm using a lot like I would a Ned rig. This is going to be more that finesse style fishing. And I've got it on my spinning combo. This is just a 10-pound braid. I've got 8-pound fluorocarbon leader on a 7-foot medium with a moderate tip. A medium light would also work exceptionally well. And this is going to be very targeted. I'm going to use this in areas that I'm looking for laydowns, I'm looking for open spots, I'm looking for up under docks. This is going to skip much better than a regular Texas rig normally would. And it works so well in many different situations. Again, sometimes it pays to go finesse. Sometimes those bass are looking for a little bit smaller meal. A lot of times we can use smaller baits and presentations to get some really big bites. And that's what that's all about. Plus, unlike something like a Ned rig or even a wacky rig, it's going to be a lot more weedless, and those bass are probably going to be down under cover, especially if they're pushing up on beds. They're going to be up and away, so you're going to have to go in there and get them, right? We've said it before. You've got to go in there and get those bass. And when I'm fishing that, well, I'm making a lot of quick casts. I'm yo-yoing it in that area fairly quickly. I'm not working it in that area very long. I'm not bringing it all the way back to the boat. I'm working it for maybe 25% of the cast, and then I bring it in, and then I move to the next spot. I use that finesse technique. Ironically, that's what I'm going to be using to cover a lot of water. And it is so effective with that type of presentation. I've caught so many fish doing that, and not just little fish. That'll catch pretty much anything. I've caught shellcracker and bluegill and crappie, but I've also caught a lot of big bass. And again, I like to put something like a crawl or a little creature bait on there, because if those bass are on bed, well, it feels like to the bass that it's under attack, that the bed is really being attacked. And a smaller bait is going to give those bass less of an opportunity to just grab the tip of it and move it off the bed and spit it out, which in the spawn is something that we know bass love to do. They can be real finicky about that. But I do have a caveat. If you are fishing beds, if you're seeing bass up on beds and you're sight fishing them and you're catching them, put them right back. Don't hold them. Don't show them to your friends. Certainly don't put them in your live well, unless, of course, that bass was stressed and it needs a rest. If you need to give it a rest, then do that, but do it as quickly as you possibly can. The goal is to protect that bed. That's why those bass are on there. That's why you're going to catch a lot of buck males, because the females move in, lay their eggs, and move out. And that's something else that we can do. Something else that we can look at is, as we work those back pockets, we don't necessarily have to work only beds, but we can move out on those migration routes, and you'll see those females, having deposited their eggs, are going to be moving back out more toward the main link and getting ready to set up for their spring and summer modes. So it's something to keep an eye on. But like I said, you catch a bass off the bed, put it right back. But these Texas rig techniques and tricks and the way of rigging them differently, I'm telling you what, they can be absolute money in the pre-spawn and the spawn, and you'll catch way more fish on them than you thought you were able to. So there you have it. My Texas rig cheat sheet for pre-spawn and spawn bass fishing. And it even works into the spring. Don't be afraid to try different riggings. Don't be afraid to try different retrieves. And most importantly, don't be afraid to try different types of soft plastic baits. You will be amazed at how effective it can be and at some of the fish that you can catch. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.